Faylita Hicks is the author of Hood Witch, a finalist for the 2020 Lambda Literary Award for Bisexual Poetry, among other accolades. They are the former editor-in-chief of Borderlands Texas Poetry Review and the 2021 poet in residence of Civil Rights Corps. The work has been published in American Poetry Review, Long Reads, Poetry, Slate, Texas Observer, Yale Review, and others. They have an MFA from Sierra Nevada University and have received fellowships and residencies from Tin House, Lambda Literary, Jack Jones Literary Arts, Broadway Advocacy Coalition, The Dots Between, and The Right of Return USA. Without further ado, please welcome Faylita. Please take the mic.
Hi, everyone. My name is Faylita Hicks. I'm very excited about today's panel discussion. It is called Art as Social Activism, and our first guest is Tamika Cole. Tamika Cole began making collages while incarcerated at Julia Tutwiler Prison for Women. Her work links penal time to other forms of racialized subjugation and violence against Black people. Her collages combines images from newsprint, books, and photographs to examine the criminal legal system and the nation's long history of anti-Black violence. Dr. Nicole R. Fleetwood is a writer, curator, and professor of American Studies and Art History at Rutgers University. She is the author of Marking Time, Art in the Age of Mass Incarceration, winner of the National Book Critics Award in Criticism, the Charles Rufus Maury Book Award in Art History, and the Frank Jewett Mather Award in Art Criticism. She is also the curator of the exhibition Marking Time at MoMA PS1, the co-editor of Aperture Magazine's Prison Nation issue. Her work has been supported by Rockefeller Foundation's Bellagio Center, the Art for Justice Fund, the Whiting Foundation, the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, Schoenberg Center for Scholars and Residents, and many others. Jimmy Woo is the executive director at Inside Out Writers, a nonprofit organization that teaches nearly 30 weekly creative writing classes inside the Los Angeles County Juvenile Halls and 9 adult prisons. His firsthand experiences of growing up in our California detention facilities has resulted in him being an advocate for juvenile justice reform, and his work at IOW allows him to assist with helping to provide direct reentry services and much needed support to young people returning to their communities. And in 2019, Jimmy was appointed a commissioner to the Alternative Incarceration Work Group formed by the Los Angeles County Board of Supervisors. And finally, Rhodessa Jones is a performer, teacher, director, and the co-artistic director of the critically acclaimed performance company Cultural Odyssey. Jones founded and directs the Medea Project Theater for Incarcerated Women, an award-winning performance workshop committed to the personal and social transformation of women, now in its 23rd year. She is the recipient of a USA Artist Fellowship, a Pew Fellow of the Week, and was named the Frank H.T. Rhodes Chair at Cornell University. Recently, she was the actress voice talent for the Lulu and Disney's Pixar film Soul. Thank you so much for coming into this space. I'm so happy to have a chance to ask you some really important questions, especially for this 20th anniversary of the film. So let's just get into that. Hi, everyone. Welcome into the space.
Morning.
You doing good this morning?
Good morning.
Yeah,
Great.
everyone had
Great.
coffee.
Happy to be here.
Got my coffee right here.
Good. I'm lacking. I did not get the coffee. Next round, maybe next time. Right. Well, I'm going to jump right into the questions. And the first one I've got here for you guys is going to be directly for Tamika Cole and Jimmy Woo. I think it's really important that we uplift the voices of people who have spent time in a cage directly firsthand. So I would like to go ahead and share that space. Tamika and Jimmy, we all know that great storytelling is what helps us to understand historic inequities and helps us to identify potential futures. But who gets the privilege of telling that story is just as important as the story itself. How has sharing your experience as someone who has been put in a cage influenced what stories you decide to tell and what creative choices you make in your medium?
For me, being that I'm such an introverted person, it really has helped me to grow into myself, to fulfill purpose in my life, and all of my personal issues. It's the best therapy in the world. I guess because I'm such a person that's always up under my own rock, um, and people, whether it's on a personal level or whether it's a a a, a, a systemic type of level, they tend to feel like maybe I'm slow, maybe you know, people will try to abuse that. They'll try to get over on you. So over a period of time, I guess I developed some serious anger issues because I don't really talk about anything personal about myself, and I actually really still don't, but I'm doing a lot better now. And it was a great way for me to address um, personal issues and things around me that I see going on that I know are not right. And being from Alabama, I was just telling somebody about a friend of mine that's coming up for parole. I recall her when she first came into prison. She looked at like a little boy, and I noticed that's something that prison guards, prison administrators particularly do not like. So from that moment, just the way she looked, she was discriminated against. She has served 26 years in prison and was not allowed to go to trade school to get a GED because they ain't like how she looked.
Mm.
They told her to change her hairstyle and they'll let her go. She changed her hairstyle. They still didn't let her go. So, it speaks volumes about the mentality of the people that are allowed to oversee other people. They can't stay in their professional space. What she looks like or her sexual orientation, mind, anybody else has nothing to do with the reason why you're there. So I am, reaching out to try to do whatever I can to help her get out.
Thank you. Thank you. I think that's an important point, especially when your medium is with visual images, correct? And
Yes.
so you're constantly thinking about what does it mean to put a face on someone, put a face on the names and on the dates and then on the issues that we're talking about. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Mhm.
Tamika's also an accomplished writer. She actually started writing before she started making visual art.
And now where it starts with the words, just getting some words out. I think Jimmy has a little bit of experience with the writing too, as well, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really loved everything that you just shared, Tamika. For me, I was introduced to journaling, to creative writing at a very young age. It was actually when I was 17 years old in Central Juvenile Hall in Los Angeles. And it was during this time when, the era of the super predators, so many young people that I was with in this facility were all facing, life sentences, right? We're all being tried as adults. And it was a really difficult time for all of us kids that were, being incarcerated, during that time. And, when I was introduced to creative writing, it was basically, being approached by the Catholic chaplain of the facility I was in, asking if I would be interested in participating in this innovative creative writing class, the first of its kind. And I didn't have any type of real interest in writing. It was simply a means for me to spend more time out of my room. But then I ended up learning some of the most profoundly impactful, life-changing, lessons in my entire life in these creative writing workshops. Because what ended up happening is, through my own personal self-reflections in writing, I was able to really engage in deep introspection, learn so much about who I really was. And through the power and magic of storytelling, when we were highly encouraged, it was never forced, it was encouraged for us to share our writings with other students in our class. What we realized is that we had so much more in common than we had in differences. You know what I mean? And it was just so powerful to see people that had been taught at a very young age, conditioned to kind of like hate one another based on the color of their skin, based off of, being from rival gangs, just to be able to see that we were all pretty much one and the same. We're all going through these same, horrific circumstances of having our lives basically, held in limbo, and with no certainty of what our futures were going to become. And so for me, I served a total of 13 and a half years, behind our prison walls in California. And I can honestly say that writing was my salvation. It was how I got through my time. And, I'm privileged to be able to do the work I do now because throughout the course of the organization's history, over 25,000 young people have been given this tool, for self-examination, for healing from trauma, because oftentimes it's like it begins, with any type of recovery or healing journey with an acknowledgement that there is something there that you need to heal from, right? And as everyone knows, hurt people, heal others, right? And so it's just been like incredibly impactful for me in my own life to be able to continuously, even to this day, turn to that, to that meeting, for me to continue to practice it and to be able to, continue to remind myself of who I really am, and the way that shaped kind of my creative choices. It's basically trying to make myself relatable, speaking my truth, right? And in turn, with those that are still incarcerated, really encouraging them to never forget who they really are, right? For them to share their truth, for them to realize they are not, the worst decision or mistake they ever made, but there's so much more to each and every one of them, and they can often find out who they really are through writing. And so, kind of like what I write to this day are things that I hope others can find kind of inspiring in a way. And more importantly than anything, though, just to draw these connections, to see I'm going through this right now, you're going through this right now, and we have the shared experience. And through our, writing and storytelling, we can end up forming friendships that can actually help support one another in ways that, can't be found elsewhere. So, that's kind of like where, writing has played such a key role in my life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, I know that was one thing that I held on to while I was in jail was writing, just trying to hold on to any storytelling thing I had to make me feel like a whole person. Right. So I appreciate both of your comments. That's really important to note, is that these are tools that can be used to help people feel like they're being heard when their voices are normally being muffled. And so I appreciate that. So this next question is for Dr. Nicole Fleetwood and Rhodessa Jones. Both of you are successful innovators and advocates, as well as artists. Over the course of your careers, how have your professional practices been transformed or impacted by your social activism? And by that, I mean, how has it changed the organizations that you partner with, or switched up your imagined trajectory for your creative future, or how has it influenced your artistic choices? Great. Big question.
I'll go. I've been very well. Thank you very much, Jimmy and Tamika. You just touched me so with your comments as an artist who has worked in prisons around the world, and I have a large group in South Africa right now that I've been working with. But my career has been on this path. I started out as a singer with my two sisters and grew up in upstate New York, farm girl. My mother and father were migrant workers. And then I moved to California and I got involved with dance, and I was an aerial performer for a long time, the only Black woman hanging upside down and this kind of stuff. And then I started working with children in the public school systems, getting children here in San Francisco. It's a Rainbow Tribe exists, in California, and getting children to step up and explore their own reality, getting, the Samoans, the Spanish, the Africans, and getting them to tell stories about who they were, so that in a classroom, this is another history lesson for everybody that's interacting, and they would bring their grandparents. I'd say bring your grandmother, who she'll come and tell us what she was doing at 9 years old. And so all of a sudden you have this food, you have this interaction with each other that's different than the basic learning that is required. And the California Arts Council, who have always watched me, my mother used to say, if you're going to walk in the light, you better walk right, because you don't know who's watching. And I got a call one day to come into the San Francisco County Jail and work with incarcerated women teaching aerobics. And I'm like, okay, but this was during the time of Jane Fonda and the unearthing of aerobics. But I was fascinated at the whole idea that what does this got to do with rehabilitation, with jail. And my first experience had been with Attica. I had a brother who was at Attica when Attica fell many, many, many years ago. And so I had some idea of jail, but going in and meeting so many women in jail, and they were so angry. And I used to say, what are you mad about? Who are you mad at? And I said, because I'm here with you now, and they would look at me like, you're going to talk to me? And I said, yeah, tell me what happened to you. So my work is rooted in giving women voice, giving a woman a place to stand and say, this happened, this hurt me, this is what somebody did to me. And I started to build stories on what they would share with each other and with me. And I would say to women, somebody needs to hear your story. There's somebody that's hiding, there's somebody that's in pain, that your children need. In South Africa, I do public performances. I do public performances with incarcerated people. The sheriff in the San Francisco County got it. And he said, okay, so he would let me bring the women out under guard into a major theater. This was not your Negro auxiliary ball. This was like a major theater in San Francisco. And the women would stand center stage, and I talk about public communion, because this is somebody's mama, this is somebody's daughter, this is somebody's cousin, this is somebody's auntie. And the women would tell their stories, everything from rape to kidnapping to murder. They would tell their own stories. And I think that it has brought me to this place where I can't leave the work. I can't leave the work, and the world has expanded for me. I teach I teach all over the country. And I'm asked to go into prisons and work with women. I remember when I first went into the prisons talking about Anita Hill. And the women were like, oh, they were just sure she was guilty. She was lying, she was this, she was that. And then the sisters start looking at Clarence Thomas like, he did that shit. It was like, and the whole idea that I'd say, okay, let's talk about it. Let's talk about, what does this do with women's lives? What's it got to do with finding your freedom, as a woman? What are you gonna do when you get out of the joint? In what way can we work to help you not come back? And that when women were experiencing me as an artist, talking about my own reality, because I was a mother at 16, and they would say to me, well, why are you telling us your business? And I say, Black folks, be worried about who's gonna know our business, So I'd say, because I'm interested in creating a path out of here. I want to create a path built on your stories, your struggles, back to your communities, back to your children, your families. And one young woman who later was murdered, Regina Brown, Regina said to me, she said, but then you're not the police? And I said, no, I'm an artist. And she said, well, what's that? With no malice. And I've been attempting to answer that for the last almost 40 years now, working in prisons. My organizations have only expanded. Cultural Odyssey has been an incredible base for me to do my work, and everybody calls and comes in and out. I go to universities all over the country and work with people who are now interested in artist social activism. And I won't blow my horn too much, but I feel like a lot of my work has has brought social activism to the center again. And I'm very blessed that people want to know. They want to know the stories of women, which we'll get into later, you know, but I always found that was so fascinating that so many people would come to my class and say, well, why are women in jail? And I said, why wouldn't she be?
Yeah.
But it's about implication. It's about being in the wrong place at the wrong time, hanging out with the wrong dude, looking for love in all the wrong places. Oh, baby, you're so fine. You carry the bag for me. Baby, you go try to cash this check. You love me, daddy? Yeah, daddy love you. You know, these are the stories that I've heard across the world. And getting young women and young men to look at their own lives in a closer context, you know, like, how are you treating the woman that you're supposedly love? You know, how are you dogging her out? You know, young girls, teaching them that, you know, don't give it all up so easy. They'd say, damn. I'd say, no, I'm just telling you, as a mother, as a friend, as an artist, as an activist, you know, you're beautiful and you have a right to a life. You have a right to your own life. And if you get your own life, you got more to bring to a relationship. And I think I'm just going to stop there, and we'll I think I've answered some of the questions, but you know, we can get into it more later, but I'll just stop right there.
No, absolutely.
I do this to you, Miss Jones. I got to.
Oh, I love you too. And I came on, I said, oh, that's one of them girls I would just have to squeeze. We'd have to like know each other. Thank you just for being here and doing your work. And I'm so glad that we're sharing this time together. Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Absolutely. I think this is good. One, because we got the spectrum of folks, right, in the room. And I appreciate that spectrum is really important. I've been in too many spaces where folks who have spent time behind the bars have not been the ones speaking, and only other folks. And then, you know, now we get, okay, what's the whole picture? I really appreciated that comment, that question that Regina asked you. What's an artist? Right?
Yes.
There's this term that we all kind of like, you know, see, the professional term of artists, but no, but what's the artist to a regular folk who, you know, doesn't necessarily have access to that or doesn't have the frame of reference for it, right? Me trying to explain to my family what an artist is.
Yeah,
they're like, well, what's a job? Answer that question. But I'm very excited to hear what Miss Dr. Nicole has to share.
Oh, well, first of all, I want to say that I was in graduate school in the Bay Area in the 90s, and I got to experience Rhodessa Jones's incredible theater and just magic. So I'm so happy to be in this space. And Tamika Cole is one of the artists featured in Marking Time and is a dear friend and a fellow Pisces. And Jimmy, I know of your work. I think we've been on an event together, or I don't know if through Art for Justice or just some network. I feel like I definitely know of your work. So it's great to be like in conversation with people whose work I deeply admire and work I'm familiar with. And, you know, and I just want to say that, you know, we all have our connections to this, like personal connections. And for me, it's just really important to say that I actually started doing this research and writing on art in the visual culture of mass incarceration because I spent many years visiting incarcerated loved ones and just collecting those photographs from the visiting room and, you know, and all the like emotions attached to that, all the longing, all the sadness and the love, and just really watching, especially my aunts who were like committed to their children who were in, you know, spending long-term sentences, and how every Saturday without fail, they get up at the crack of dawn, they, you know, get their coins together, because at this time you could only use coins in those machines. My aunt Sharon would stop off at the laundromat, get like $20 of quarters, you know, drive 3 to 4 hours, you know, to sit across from her son, Alan. And so that really is, for me, that strategy of survival, what Black women do to take care of family and what they've done historically to take care of family and community, for me was the through line to do this research and to just use that as the model. Like, these are incredible people who've been holding together families, communities for centuries in the face of all kinds of anti-Black violence, violence against poor people, violence against gender nonconforming people, violence against anyone who doesn't fit into some idea of the kind of status quo. And so really, I try to really take serious those lessons and to use that as my method for doing marking time.
Thank you. Thank you. I think when we do this work, especially when we do it in fields that are kind of emerging, or when we're trying to bridge disciplines, when we're trying to change the conversation, right, in a global way, it can be very difficult. And so I'm interested from Rhodessa and Nicole, if you could tell me a little bit more how prioritizing artivism expanded or limited your access to diverse audiences. Like, was there ever a time where someone was like, oh, well, that's really serious and we just want to laugh, bring us something funny, or, we're only funding community projects right now, and that's just not what the community wants to talk about. How has that, like, behind the scenes, behind the craft of making, how has it impacted? How has your activism impacted your ability to move through the world?
I tell you, one of the early things that happened to me was that folks would see me on stage, because I wrote a one-woman show, Big Butt Girls, Hard-Headed Women, which was about my work in jails. And they would be interested until they realized I wasn't an ex-offender. I had not been a prisoner, and then they weren't interested in me. It was like, oh, you haven't been to jail? Oh, well, and that was an interesting thing. But the other side of it was that the audiences came because I feel like in America, when you look at mass incarceration, which we don't talk about women enough when we're dealing with it, but America, anybody that's halfway conscious is like, what's going on? The new orange or whatever that is. When I've gone to universities, and that's all the students will know about incarceration is, bad, and there's a lot more as we know. But I feel like people rush to see, like, what is it that she's talking about? Because it touches so many of our lives. Somebody's in jail. And even when I met a woman, I was at the National Black Theater Festival doing Big Butt Girls, and this fabulous sister came up. I mean, like, coiffed, and she said, "Oh, girl, I loved your show. Girl, you rocked it." She said, "But you know what? My twin sister's in prison in Arizona. I haven't seen my sister in 15 years. I just couldn't deal with it." She said, "But I'm thinking about getting in touch with her after seeing this work, seeing your work." And that touched me immensely, And now when I talk about my work, I always ask, the audience, how many people know somebody's incarcerated? And I remind people it's like HIV, like what HIV was 20 years ago, and everybody knew somebody or somewhat of somebody. But it has expanded my horizons a lot, and it has gotten me much more. Like I said, South Africa loomed once I went over with my show, and I did my show Big Butt Girls, and they wanted me to tour all over South Africa. I said, only if I get to be in the prisons, only if I get to talk and be with women who've inspired my work. And that's how I got into Naturena Prison, which is my other home just outside of Joburg, and that has been so expansive. Now, the other side of it is that back to, oh, it's too heavy. I've had friends like that too, say, girl, it's so deep. And I said, well, maybe it's time you look at your life, because, we may all agree the Black woman is God, but why? Because these are, it's like, why? Where's she been? What's happening to her? And there were people who said, don't you want to just laugh? And I say, if you look closely and you listen, and as I direct women and shape them, the prisoners themselves too, because there's some amazing comedians, there's just some amazing personalities in jail. I said, stay with us and watch it, because I worried that a lot of the Black females in my community were scared of it. They didn't want to come because it was just so deep. You know, they didn't want anybody scratching that surface. I said, come on, y'all. That's, as Jimmy was saying about, you know, you heal or you hurt, you know, and so many of us were hiding, you know, we're hiding what we think is, you know, you're living out loud and you don't even know it, you know. And so, again, somebody needs to hear your story. I'm working with women with HIV right now, and some of them are still so ashamed. I said, come on, girl. There's somebody else out there who is living with HIV and she's hiding. She needs for you to tell her what you told us. So yeah, it has expanded my my field a lot. And I was very surprised. I thought it was going to be a very small part of my life. This art, this activism. And all of a sudden the goddess said, no, Rhodessa Jones, that's what you're going to do. Go do this.
Go.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Appreciate that answer. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just, you know, I want to hear more from Jimmy and Tamika, so I'll just say briefly that I think when I first started this project, I got a lot of no's in terms of grants and exhibition spaces, and you know, now I'm in a space where there's a lot of yeses, and that yes is also, I would say, partly in terms of just growing my collective. Like, as my community grows, it opens up more spaces, and I think for me, it's just proof that we just don't do this work in isolation, that we have to, you know, just continue to, like Rhodessa was saying, expand our community. And for me, that's exciting, you know, that there's more and more avenues opening up and people are like dreaming bigger, thinking bigger. What does it look like to have a world without prisons, to have another way of us addressing harm and healing and community and care? And yeah, so I'm excited and here for it all, and here for those conversations continuing to evolve and change.
Agreed. I mean, I think that's the core of it, right? Who gets the money to do the work, to put the stories out there, right? It's the same as who gets to tell the stories. You can't separate those two facts. And so Tamika and Jimmy, if you could tell me a little bit about whether you've come up against any barriers of storytelling where maybe a sponsoring organization was like, okay, you could tell the story, but can you not talk about this? Or, you know, can you not talk about this? Or if you have been embraced, if you have had a chance to really go further in your storytelling because someone has been like, you know what, how much money do you need? What kind of support do you need? What kind of support can I offer you? What has been your experience?
For me, I only really had one incident at Birmingham work release. There was this warden. He was a captain when he was at Tutwiler, and he made warden. He was extremely abusive. And when a story came out in the newspaper about actually the male inmates talking about him handcuffing somebody and punching somebody, he just did so much stuff. I actually can't remember his name right now, but when stuff comes out about the Department of Correction, what they do, they get the newspaper and say somebody stole the newspaper. They don't want to put it out for inmates to see, although you're going to eventually see it on the news or whatever. So I wanted to do a big piece on him, and I asked Fury Young, who I was working with at the time on the Die Jim Crow project, to send me a lot of stuff, as particularly that article and pictures of him. The Warren, they sent me a letter in the mail saying that Fury sent me U.S. currency inside of that, which I knew was a blatant lie. He would never do something like that to jeopardize me. But other than that, I think from my time from being in juvenile and moving into the adult system, it definitely hardened me in a lot of different ways. So since I've been exposed to that, like being honest with you, you can't deny me. You can't tell me no, because I'm always willing to break the rules for something I feel is right. I'm gonna stand up to you. I'm gonna take the disciplinary. I'm gonna take segregation. So now it's at a point that since you put me through that, the trauma that you put me through actually is really built me as a person to have a mindset. If I know this right, or I feel this right, I feel passionate about this, I really don't care what you say. I'm not gonna let it determine what I create, the content, whether you like it, how you feel about it. And it also has a lot to do with when you get older and you mature. I mean, being honest with you, what people think is you just don't give a shit.
Yes.
You're too old. You're too old to care about what the next person thinks. You live in your own life on your own terms.
Yeah.
So, I'm just here to do my part, and I hope it helps somebody. Because personally, there, just like Ms. Jones said, there is so much talent inside the prison. People really should be kicking the prison doors down, trying to get the creators, people that work, everything that's inside of there. I promise you, what they think is out here is nothing compared to what's inside of there. Because really, in order for you to have some level of being normal inside of it, you have to break a lot of rules. You have to be able to get around it, go around it. Like, I've heard stories about male inmates out of a cardboard box create a bottom the exact same color of the draw they had, and they use it for a secret compartment for countryman under there, and you can't tell. That I mean, they are innovative. So, people probably need to start rethinking, because right now, look at it out here. Everybody is hiring. Our governor has said they won't accept the whatever the government money for the unemployment is anymore. But people still don't want to go back because you want to pay people crumbs. But a person coming out of prison, 13, $12 an hour, they're grateful for that. And if you treat them right, they'll stay with you. But if you want to get them $7 an hour, $8 an hour, and they've been disconnected from society, they have kids, they have family, and it's just natural. You gotta expect them to want to get back in the flow of what's going on in society fairly quick, though it's a process. You're sending them to go out there. If this person is doing this and this against the law, but they have this, that, and the other, and they want that, you sending them to go do that. The prison system, I'm gonna give you how I know it is not for you. So I go back to my old neighborhood where I grew up at in Southtown Project, and I want to get a picture of somebody's hands and feet for something I'm working on. And I'm talking to one of my old homies from back in the day. So I see these little boys. We walk to the store. I see these little boys, and I started talking to them and asking them some questions about trying to explain to them. They weren't on board to do that, but one of them stood there and talked to me, and he was saying how he went through the juvenile system, and I was explaining to them how I've been in more trouble than you'll ever imagine. Uh, and I was saying, I asked him, did what he went through, all the detention centers, did it help him? He was like, no. I said, after they release you, um, did they help you to transition back out of here? Ask you what you needed to try to be successful? He was like, no. They just put him in this facility, that facility, that facility. But if you go and look at the Jefferson County juvenile system from when I was there, it is a miniature county jail. So what they're doing is they want to acclimate you to being used to being in prison. So it's a smooth transition to going to adult prison. They're both the same now. They want you to be prison ready, accepting this is your reality as a young Black male or young Black female. And it's all the same now. But what it is when they take the youth away from you, when they take the female, a lot of times our families are held down by the female. So you have the children, you have the mother, you have the father, and it is to completely destroy the Black family structure. Point blank period.
And I think that's a great transitioning point for this next question. And we'll come back to you, Jimmy. But I think this question needs to be asked while we're all here, because I think you guys are the greatest people to answer it. Stranger Inside, which was, we already know, an amazing film. I also happen to love the episodes that were directed by Cheryl Dunye in Lovecraft Country. That focused on the Black femme, on the queer Black femme. So my question is, what do you think is the global impact of Black queer femme directors, writers, and performers like Cheryl Dunye telling the stories of Black queer femmes? And that transition is, we know that they hold down the family. We know that they are normally the ones who are doing the visiting, who are coordinating, how we keep in contact and how we take care of our people when they come out. And so I'm just interested in what it means to have the Black queer femme in particular being highlighted by the film, but also in the conversations that we're having about the carceral nation that we're living in. Why is it important that we keep telling those stories in particular? Because we hear a lot about Black men who go to prison. We hear a lot about men who go to prison, but the rate for incarceration for Black femmes in particular is just skyrocketing right now, especially in the last 5 years. So, and that's open. So whoever wants to take that one.
Well, I just want to say that the film Stranger Inside is incredible, and I hope that this 20-year anniversary is this opportunity for like a new audience to really be acquainted with it. And I think it's at a moment where people are more receptive to like work around art and incarceration and film and incarceration. I think, Ava DuVernay has helped with that. The really great film Time by Garrett Bradley, so I see Stranger Inside in conversation with these incredible works, all directed by Black women that I've just mentioned, thinking about prisons more expansively, people in prison, but just the way, as Tamika said, totally reshapes the Black family and Black communities. So I just wanted to start off by acknowledging the film. And I do think what you're saying about whose story gets represented when we think about, quote, mass incarceration, prisons, the kind of austerity and brutality of the prison system. And not only are Black films, especially Black queer films, more like the rates of incarceration going up, but also the treatment inside prison, the punishment rate, especially of queer Black women, is higher than any other group of people. And if you look at like infractions, tickets, being put in solitary confinement, having restrictions like not being able to have visitors or not having access to the phone. And there's been more and more reports coming out showing that Black women are especially targeted, but especially Black queer women by prison systems once they're inside, right? In terms of like access to even some of the organizations that I've been in contact with for my research. And Rhodessa, I'm so curious what your experience with this is. A lot of times these nonprofits, they're working with, quote, well-behaved imprisoned people. And I have, encountered so many of these programs that have where, 30, 40% of the population is Black, and this in men's and women's prisons. Mm-hmm. And maybe 5 to 10% of the participants in these art-based programs are Black. So it's an absolute, and so a lot of the organizers are saying, oh, or it's the prison staff who determines who gets access, and it's about disciplinary records or security levels. So it just shows you more and more how even once, you know, we know there's a disparity in sentencing, but even once Black people, folks are inside prisons, that they're punished more harshly than other groups of people.
You know,
Mhm.
what I found happened when I first started working in the jails here in San Francisco. First of all, San Francisco is a whole nother planet, you know. So I had to let a Black women in jail say, it's okay, it's cool, come on out, versus this kind of hiding, as Tamika was saying about the females who come in and they look like men, they dress like men, you know. It's like and they would try to tone it down because of something in their own head. Now the church was a problem when I first started more than 30 years ago. The church would come in with the Bibles and with the rules and who is an abomination, and all this stuff would go down, and women would be talked really down to, you know. And at the same time, I auditioned for Stranger Inside. I didn't get it, but I auditioned for that film.
Did you?
Yeah, Cheryl. I'm getting you, Cheryl. But anyways, no, it opened my eyes to how it's very important that the Black femme is like, because they kick those women, those creatures kick doors down. They're not having it. You know, I mean, I remember just growing up in the drag queens on the street, you know, the men. They were the ones, well, we all know about Stonewall, you know. It's like, but that was happening everywhere where I grew up. Men were kicking ass. It was like, that guy say, look, I'll take off this wig and I will whip you into back into time. You know, and I'm like, wow. And then when I started working with women, I saw that they were very hard on each other first. I remember Andy was an old con who would sort of catch young women, you know, and Andy knew the game. And I remember the time I saw it happen when I was in jail, where this girl had been Miss California. She had been actually a contestant for Miss California, beautiful Black girl, butterscotch skin, the whole thing. But she was like, Andy had the commissary, Andy had the money, Andy had access. And so, you know, I watched Andy snare this woman, you know. It's like, you know, give her candy, give her, you know, here, baby, you know, here's a cream for your skin, you know, and all this. And this young woman thinks she's getting over it because she is fine. And I saw the day that she jumped up and she was going to come to the gym with us. And Andy said, no, you're not. You're gonna sit right here. You're gonna grab the back of my pants and you're gonna walk around all day until I tell you that you. And I was like, whoa, you know. And the girl's like, She said, no, I'm not playing. She said, you belong to me now, baby. You belong to me. It was like, whoa, you know. And the young lady, that was such a life lesson for this young woman. Like, where am I? Where am I? You know, it's a new game. There's a new tribe of people inside. When I worked at Ocala Prison in Florida, I loved it that the bearded ladies. I mean, they were just like, they grew their beards. They were another group of human beings. And then I was talking to a minister recently about this. He said, you know, the Garden of Eden looks like many things, Ms. Jones, which I thought that was an amazing response. He said, there's all of these creatures in the Garden of Eden. And but I remember just the women at the Ocala State Prison, they were ready to go to fists with the cops because they were doing raps about, you know, commissary holes, you know, the ones who were like, they want your commissary, they're gonna pretend that they're gonna be your woman or whatever. And they were jamming, beatboxing the whole thing. And I was told that this was against the law. I was told by the deputies that homosexuality was against the law. And I'm saying, wait a minute. And they're saying, like, they can't do this. You've got to stop this. And I'm thinking, how do I stop it? Because by now the riot squad is coming across the yard because we're in dining hall, and they got dogs. I'm like, wait a minute, and they're gonna break this up. So they're coming into the dining room, and I'd say to Rome, the woman who had really helped me. I said, Rome, we got to stop. She said, stop what? I said, you can't do this rap, you can't do this beat, you can't talk about girls and pussy and titties. I said, we got to stop. And she's like, no, we're not. And I said, Rome, we got to stop. She said, Rhodessa, my whole life, this is what she said, my whole life, people have told me that who I am and what I want and what I feel is not valid, it's not real. She said, I'm in prison, and now I'm told that I can't sing about it. And I said, Rome, they're going to shut us down. I won't be able to come back. These women were up on tables with chairs, but they were going to kick ass. And the prison authorities were like, what? And I'm looking at them like, this is what's happening, y'all. I said, did you hear what she said? And I said, we'll try to stop. I said, but they're ready to die for how they feel, who they are. They've come to the end of the line. And I saw deputies and I saw the police back up. Like, I saw the police, and this was like maybe 20 years ago now, but I saw the police be schooled, and I said to the women, let's stop so we can do it again. And they only stopped because they believed and loved me, and I saw deputies backing up, like, wow, what's going on here? And I got called in. They tried to get me out of prison earlier because the warden, like what Tameka was describing, the warden was a monster. And he did not like the kind of power. So he started putting the women that I was working with in lockdown. That was happening a lot. But when a girl was center, Big Butt Girls is named after a woman, 6 foot tall woman named Deborah, who was going off to prison in chains. And I'm sitting there waiting for my class. And this sister, like, Concord great colored sister. She's like, and she's flanked on all sides by police, but she's bigger than all of them. And I'm like, take care of yourself. Have a nice day. She stopped and she turned and she took me in. She kind of but she looked at me like, yeah, you're kind of sweet. She said, baby girl, don't worry about it. She said, I got this. And when walking off, and the butt was like its own army. And it was like I said, Black women and our booties, because the booty was like, yeah, we got this, But that's how I got the title of my show, thinking about how my dad used to say, sit your big butt down, don't be so hard-headed. But here was a woman going off to do like 10 to 15 years for something that her son had done. And she had taken the blame, so I just go back down memory lane. It blows my mind, man. Yeah, but I'll stop there.
Yeah, I mean, there are so many stories to tell. We could probably sit here all day going back and forth about all the people that we've met and all the really important stories. I know as a non-binary femme, I tend to perform, especially when there are officers around. Every time I pulled over, I have a wig that I carry in a bag specifically for when I'm on the road by myself, and I'm like, okay, all right, this looks like a town where I need to put on a wig and some makeup real quick.
I love this.
But like, because I switch and I can look a million different ways, and so that tends to be a problem. And I know that especially when I'm in spaces with law enforcement, it can be really damaging and really hard. I want to make sure that we get to this last question. We only have time enough for one last question. I want everyone to have a chance to speak. I know, Jim, and we haven't heard a whole lot from you. But so why don't you go ahead and start us off for this last question here. This question is, actually, I'm trying to pick and choose because I had 2 questions. I'm gonna try to pick one. What role does art play in the ongoing fight for social justice and racial equity? What is art going to do to help us see tangible change in policy, tangible change in our communities at the local level, at the the state level, and at the national level? What role do you think art making is going to play?
That's a fantastic question. I can actually, kind of tie this into what was mentioned earlier about barriers are being embraced, in the work that I do. So, I believe in uplifting truth, empowering voices, right? And when it comes to like, our work at Inside Writers, we don't believe in censoring anybody. We want people to now start moving away from when we hear about, crimes. We want people to start focusing on the root causes of every individual case, not just looking at crime and punishment itself, right? And so, for me and IOW, we've been very fortunate to actually be embraced, because we're now speaking, every individual truth. We're helping really raise awareness on why crime even occurs in the first place. So how does this, kind of like play a role in our ongoing fight, for social justice and equity, right? And racial equity. So I think about, kids in particular, where it all begins, right? And who are not really encouraged to share what it is that's going on in their own lives, like realistically, what is happening in your homes, in your communities. So when we are able to really create this trusting, safe space, and using creative writing in particular for Inside Writers, being able to now, get them to be able to learn how to be vulnerable and be able to trust in both, the adults in the room and also their peers. What ends up happening is that they become more confident in who they are as people, and then in so doing, becoming more comfortable with just speaking to strangers and helping others understand what it is that they themselves went through that led to whatever events unfolded in their lives. And so then that ties into them now, because they are more comfortable in their own skin, being able to sit in front of, policymakers, right? And I think about, locally in LA, how so many of our youth are now in the same spaces with our board of supervisors, amongst other, government, directors, right? And they're just saying, okay, these are the things I went through. These are the resources that I wish I had when I was younger that could have helped avoid, me getting arrested and then incarcerated. And when I was inside these facilities, these were the resources that I wished I had, so that when I returned home, I would have been better prepared, to live my life post-incarceration. And then take it to the state level, so many people that have been system impacted, who have learned to really speak their truths, have sat in front of our, legislators, and they have been able to really, influence change on a more mass scale. When we talk about, alternatives to incarceration, the work group that I'm part of, basically, that led to Measure J in the state of California, which was now for the first time 10% of funding coming from the state to LA County was going to be reallocated towards community-based organizations, so that we can then come in and provide, care and support, treatment, right? Resorting to only jails as a last resort. And so that's kind of like, how I see art can definitely, play a role, for social justice. And when we talk about a mass scale, even maybe a potential global reach, then we talk about filmmaking. We take a look at, the incredible Bryan Stevenson's Just Mercy, that was released, last year, right? And take a look at, something that here we in the United States know has just been incredibly atrocious when it comes to wrongfully convicting people and then sentencing them to die, right? And that's something that we're aware of that other countries may not be aware of. So when we talk about art, that's the impact that it has.
Thank you.
Wow.
I'm looking around my screen. Who would like to go next?
Yeah, I totally agree with Jimmy's assessment, as well as just having done this for so long. I feel like we as the early my generation of activists, we opened the way, We opened the way, and now it's not hidden. I remember Man Child in the Promised Land, this book, you know, Joanne Little, that song, and now prison is at least a part of the landscape, you know. And back to Toni Morrison, who said, you know, I am at my center. I think that the writing, as Jimmy's describing, that it's valid, it's important, you know, that it's your voice, and it's to be honored and to be handled. And back to my own work in California, the sheriff, Mike Hennessy, who's since retired, he got it. I mean, I met Angela Davis, I met Dr. Noble Wade. We were all working at the county jail because he wanted the sheriff, he wanted the jails to be this incredible learning ground for everybody. So, you know, it was like being in there, and Angela would teach in the evenings, and you know, just seeing. But then Martha Graham says people from California believe anything's possible. So, you know, it was like living in that state and growing up in it. And I just did a whole thing at the library here around Brian Stevenson's book, you know, Just Mercy. And the whole idea that we're looking at justice and redemption, which is really, you know, because he just sort of introduced and said, no, you've got to put this on the table. They are human beings, you know, then our children are being locked up in such large numbers. So I feel like arts, the films, the whole idea that we're having this conversation, that we're talking about it. All this is a part of opening the way and changing our relationship to it, you know, to incarceration, and getting, you know, just looking at the whole thing had been on television this week about George Floyd, and how all these young people just hit the streets, and they're just like they're telling the police, no more. No, we're not dealing.
Absolutely.
I'm going to die today. You know what I'm saying? That kind of a thing. So I think I feel very much a part of a certain time in history that opened the door. And my own performances, the Medea Project Theater for Incarcerated Women / the HIV Circle, is very, very popular because people are going to come in and they're going to learn something about what they either are hiding that they know, or they want to know more about, or they think they don't know about, you know. Yeah. And it's all art, you know.
Thank you.
Tamika, do you want to comment? Just so I'm kind of thinking about art and the me to go.
I think when it comes to art, that self-expression is what makes people who previously didn't want to see you as human see you as human. So once it opens their eyes to seeing another human being in spite of what they've done is not who they are as a person. So there are more people that are actually getting interested in hearing these stories. But I also think what's going to really create an opportunity is that what's been going on with the police officers, as that barricade that they've had up to keep their secrets to protect each other starts to fall, and they're being incarcerated. In the end, people are going to see what they never been in trouble before. We need to give them another chance. But I think it's going to create an opportunity. Oh, if that person deserves a chance, then this person deserves a chance as well, because he killed somebody. What's the difference? It's going to create a whole nother opportunity that they can't deny people. Because how you going to say this human being is bad, and this human being did this, but he's not bad? No, it's not that they're bad. The decisions that they made impacted their lives, and it impacted other lives. So to make this fair for everyone, now you have to create a system that gives everybody a chance, and they're going to be sort of kind of forced to do it, because you can't do it for them without doing it for us. Because it's like I always say, police officers, correctional officers, all those people, you put your hand on the Bible and swore
Mm.
to uphold it. So you know better than I do. I didn't do that. So if I be bad, like it's just, it's different to me. I could be wrong, but it's different to me. You the one put your hand on the Bible, because down here in Alabama, this is what a person actually said. We down here in Alabama, we don't want all these people implanting themselves coming to our beautiful state, because we believe in the Bible, in guns, and death row. Now, I just want some people to just look at those three and see how they go together. But
You know,
how they go together, the guns, the Bible, and death row. And I'm from the South, the deep South. So I have, over a period of time, learned I have seen more atrocities committed against other human beings in the name of Jesus. Hate me for saying it, but I'm just telling you. And so I just think with everything that's going on right now, it will be a slow process, but because they want to protect their own and probably even what I feel like is sacrifice some of their own to get the heat off of them, is going to create little opportunities for, you know, people that just have been completely abused by the system, to get some breathing room, to open people's minds up, for them to even change policies that's going to help us, even though they really don't want to. So, you know, that's just my perspective. But I hope it's just, we want it to be, because um the human spirit. That's what we want it to be. But we know it don't always work like that.
thank you.
You know, I mean, I'm a scholar. I'm an academic, and you know, I study and I teach Black freedom struggles, and art has always been at the center of freedom struggles. In order to get free, you have to have a vision of freedom, and you have to create, and you have to imagine another world. So art is at the center of that.
I agree. Thank you so much. Well, thank you all so much for being a part of this panel discussion. It has been an amazing way to start the day. And I very much hope that everyone has a chance who is watching this to again go and take a look at Stranger Inside. I think that I love the fact that the 20th anniversary is coming up in this important year, which is important to us legislatively as well as creatively. We're seeing a big turn in how this conversation is being held by the nation. And so I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you as individual artists and as conversation holders. So thank you so much. I hope that you all have a great day. Thank you.
Yeah.
You too.
Thank you.